everyone back to Beat the Game. My name's Steve, and let's talk more synergies with Wanda Maximoff in the Justice aspect. So first of all, Justice, does it resonate well with her? It should, because it came in with her hero pack, but is it the best aspect that you can play her with? Let's just see. Let's see what can be, what we can find that can really connect well with what she can do. Me personally, when I look at Wanda Maximoff, I'm looking at my alter ego Justice builds right away from the top of my head. This is going to be a lot of, again, permanence that can remove threat rather than have the events that remove threat. But again, it's going to be completely up to you. But let's look at what the cards are in the events. Are there any events that I really, really want to play with her? She has a thwart of 2, already naturally high in thwarting. So that for me is already a good sign. So let's look at the event cards that we can find that can maybe help us win the game in Justice. All right. So first of all, let's look at Great Responsibility. She does have a way to give herself some tough status cards, but I don't think Great Responsibility is a card that you will need to play with her. For me, anyway, I think it's just falls a little short of what I really want to do. She's got 10 health, and I don't think it's going to be the card I want to play. So unfortunately, Great Responsibility does not make the cut for me. Now, Turn the Tide. It is a great card, and it is finally some good damage in the Justice aspect. It's a 0-cost event for 3. Is it a good card? Yes. But there is a condition after your hero thwarts. Now, she doesn't really have any thwart events in her deck. So that is kind of, I call it anti-synergetic. Because she has to remove the threat naturally. Now, of course, we can put a Heroic Intuition. In a solo play, she can remove 3 threat and then deal some damage. Makes perfect sense. And once you get past 2 players, even 2 players, okay. 3 or 4 players, I would avoid this card like the plague. You know what? There's way better things that you can play than this in multiplayer games. But in solo play, it is not a bad card. And if you're going to play solo, then I would probably run 1 or 2 of these because it's to an enemy, so it is an attack. So I think it's pretty good. Any 0-cost event is pretty good, but remember, it is conditional as for you removing all the threat from a scheme, the main or a side scheme. So solo multiplayer, definitely want to run this. And in multiplayer, past 2 players, I think you should avoid that card. I don't think it's going to work well. Now, like I said, I think Alter Ego Justice is pretty good. Now, this is what I like with her. And Foiled. Foiled, for me, is a definite inclusion in a Justice build for her. Again, I'm going to be wanting to flip down to Alter Ego to take advantage of my superhero siblings. And then I also want to take advantage of the, what do I want to take advantage of as well? You know, the Agatha Harkness to draw some extra cards, and when I flip, something good. So Foiled really, really helps because when she comes into play, she puts 2 extra 3 boost icons in the deck, which is a lot. So having Foiled in there, so when you reveal the card as an encounter card, is a great thing. Not only that, but if the villain draws the advance while you're in hero form, you can also play that to cancel that, or you can use your chaos control to kind of switch that up depending on what's coming in. So for me, I like Foiled, especially in solo play and in multiplayer play. I'm definitely running some Foileds in my deck. All right. The next one, another attack event. Swift Retribution. Now, like I said, I love that we finally have cards that can deal damage in Justice. Okay, so for me, this is where my conundrum is. Okay, I play a Hex Bolt. Okay, so I play my Hex Bolt. I get to draw a card. I get to put the status card, and I'll put a Confusion on him. Okay, look at the combo. And then I pay 1, and then I do the villain schemes. He can't scheme. He's confused. This is where I think this card makes a lot of sense. So it's kind of like, I call it Vigilante Justice, where basically you're dealing a lot of damage with the cards from the Justice aspect. So I think this is pretty fun. Is it a card that I would run more than one of? Probably not, because it's kind of niche to click it to make it work with something else. But again, if you are in no danger, in solo play, this card is a little riskier. In multiplayer, where there's more people that can help you do the scheme and take advantage, or against a minion or a villain like Rhino who schemes for one, this is very, very good. I would avoid this card against Red Skull because it's super dangerous, especially in solo player. The 4 damage, the threat can make you lose the game. The 4 damage, you'll be able to do damage with your signature card. So Swift Retribution, it is a delicate card. I would kind of tend to shy away from, but that's my personal opinion. If you think you can, keep the villain confused and then use that to just like, oh man, I'm neutralizing him. Hex Bolt, and then this, perfect turn. Bam, bam. I'm like, perfect. All right, if it can make it work, make that work. That makes perfect sense. But I think you're going to have to fine-tune your deck around this card to make it really, really shine. So for me, it's going to be a little bit of a pass. Lay Down the Law. I love this card. Again, if you're going to be playing Sense of Justice, this is going to be a great card to play, especially if you want to do the flippy-floppy strategy or you're staying mostly in Alter Ego to draw more cards and you have your permanents that remove threat. In solo, it's great. In multiplayer, it's a little bit more tricky, but Lay Down the Law, it's very, very good, and it's remove 4 threat from a scheme, so I think it's a definite want to consider for my decks. So definitely a card you want to do. Clear the Area, as good as this card seems, it's so good in solo, but please, if you're playing multiplayer, this card does not work in multiplayer that much. Unless you guys have 4 Justice players and the scheme is always around 0. It's just think about it. You're in 4 player, the main scheme goes up by 4 right away. And then you have to remove 2 threat, and it has to be the last scheme. So in solo play, I do like the combo of Clear the Area, Turn the Tide, draw a card into another Turn the Tide. This can kind of work, especially with a villain that has a lot of side schemes. I'm thinking like Red Skull, who puts in a side scheme every turn. This can be manageable because you can use your basic actions to thwart, remove the last, clear the area, turn the tide, deal some damage without having to, attack, use your basic attack, because obviously your attack is garbage. So definitely there's potential here in solo play with those cards. But I think for me it would be a hard pass. What I do like is this card. I love multitasking. This is one of my favorite new cards in the Justice aspect. Again, it is a thwart event. Remove 2 threat and then remove 2 other threat if you use the mental resource, which is given by the Sense of Justice. So this for me is a definite one to think of including, especially in these scenarios that have a lot of side schemes. Or if you're playing the Wrecking Crew, man, that's great, because for 2, you remove 2 from 2. You can kind of manage 2 of the Wrecking Crew side schemes all at once. So for me, this multitasking is definitely a card I want to think about when I'm including. Right? So 1 for 4 threat makes a lot of sense for me. For Justice, For Justice is just basically a more expensive Lay Down the Law, but it does go anytime as long as you pay with a mental. So does it work with her? Of course it does. It's a great card for Justice. It is typical, but it's getting a little high for me. So again, it's a lot of events. For me, I think I'd rather do the Lay Down the Laws and flip back and forth and just control threat like that for 1 cost. Running Interference, you can only play that if you're an Avenger, which is great. She's an Avenger, and it's 2 threat, and it's 4 threat for 2, and then 5 threat if you're on stage 3, if you're playing on Expert. So I think maybe 1 of in your deck is fine, just because when you get to, normally when you get to you flip the boss to his last stage, You're not too worried about threat. You're mostly worried about just finishing him off as quickly as possible. So I think that one, for me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. All right? Don't make sense. Here we go. All right, and then we got nice cards like Stealth Strike. Again, now we're diving deeper into aggressive justice. I love it. Like, again, Vigilante Justice, dealing damage with threat removal. For me, it's beautiful. So check this out. So 4 damage to an enemy, remove 2 threat, and then you can use your basic and then finish off. So you can technically do 7 damage by combining a couple cards. Again, remove the 2 threat will not combo with Turn the Tide because you have to use a thwarting action. But the Turn the Tide can combo with a lot of other things in the justice aspect. But again, 4 damage, I love it, and threat removal. Now, where I think this is going to fall short is because you have the molecular decay. I would not prioritize a 3-cost event in her deck. I would probably just go for the molecular decay. So that's for me. So that one doesn't really fit the bill. A new card that was presented in her kit is the Crisis Averted. Now, again, this is a fantastic new card for Justice. If you use the mental resource, which again is very, very driven into the Justice aspect to remove a lot of threat, and she has a lot of those in her deck already. Removing 6 threat and ignoring crisis icons, man, that is a beautiful, beautiful design and conception. So I really like this card. This is most likely going to be at least a one of, because how often do you have the crisis icons that you need to avoid? But it's good to have as a safety card into your deck, just to have the option to play it if ever the need comes. And it's 6 threat removal. So that is pretty solid. So that is definitely one that I'd consider in my game. And Concussive Blow, I do like it. The thing is, she doesn't have that many physical cards. So unless you're paying with a Power of Justice, I think this is a one of in a deck, just because you want to be able to confuse him. But she also has her Hexbolt that might be able to confuse the villain. So for me, if I'm putting one, that's as much as I'm going to go with this card for me personally. If I'm playing there in Justice. All right, so let's take a quick look at the cards, the events that I would consider in my deck. This may be a one of. This I don't mind having 2 or 3 of in my deck. Turn the Tides, 1 or 2. Lay Down the Law, at least 1 or 2. And then Foiled, because I'll be flipping down a lot, maybe 1 or 2. So these are this is what I would try to find in solo play. In multiplayer, this is not something I would play in multiplayer. All right, but in solo play, I think this is a good way to remove threat and deal some damage, and just be have a good time with Justice with the with the event cards. All right, let's look at support now. There's not that many supports. Interrogation Room. Again, it's permanent threat removal. If you kill a minion, that's an easy, goes into my deck. Again, if I'm going to be building, I actually don't hate these surveillance teams. Again, why? Because they can remove some threat when I need to. And then once there's only 1 counter left, and after that, it's an easy sacrifice for Caught Off Guard. So I don't mind running these in my deck if I want to just be able to remove threat and not worry about it too much, and then keep these out of my deck. You leave them there until there's only 1 left, or you don't even use them until you actually need to use them, and then you just leave them there out of your deck. I think that is probably the best thing you can do. But again, it's a definite think about including them if you don't want to do the beat cops. All right, so if you want to do a deck with a lower cost curve, go with the surveillance teams. Or if you want a card that can do some damage at one point and also remove threat consistently, well, your Beat Cops is always your number 1 card to go to. So as far as these are basically the 3 support cards I think should go in pretty much every deck with Scarlet Witch, just because she wants permanence on the table. So that is going to be, for me, definitely included. Then let's look at the cards, obviously, that you always want to play solo multiplayer. If you're playing solo or multiplayer, solo you want 1, 2 players you want 2, 3 players you want 3. You want to get these are zero cost upgrades, man. With her deck, removing cards from your deck is crucial. So definitely include as many skilled investigators as you can when you're playing. 100%. Going back to that Vigilante Justice deck that I'm talking about, with the followeds, man. So followed, turn the tide, man. So right now you can kind of combo these, you know, put them on the again, you need the setup for it, but these 1 cost upgrades, man, they're money. You have a side scheme in play, great, put it down, get rid of it, 4 damage, and then turn the tide, 3 damage, that's 7 damage. Again, I really like this Vigilante Justice deck. I think with her, it's going to be pretty fun. I don't even think it's with her. I think it's just going to be with anyone. So right now, with the aspect, getting some more damage cards in the Justice aspect, I think this Vigilante Justice, I love it. I love the concept of it. And now I'm looking at Followed was never a card I would include. I never found really a place for it. But now, being able to just thwart and deal more damage, I think this is going to be a card that I'm going to want to include more now because I have more events that can do damage. Before, this was the only card. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to waste my time. But now, with the more the merrier is good. All right, so this is definitely a card I want to include. Next thing is Spycraft. Well, everyone has their own take on Spycraft. You do have to have a spy, and most likely we are going to put Agent Coulson in there, or we're going to put a Mockingbird, or a Nick Fury, and all 3 of those cards are spies. So that works with any one of those. I always recommend putting 1 or 2 Spycrafts in your deck for the one time that you don't have the counter spell for the Shadows of the Past, or for that, you know, for the worst possible card that you could get. So for me, always 1, 2, maybe even 3. Again, it doesn't really matter. They're permanents that stay on the table, and that is what you're looking for with her, because her best cards are her signature cards. So getting those out of the deck is crucial. All right, next cards. Let's look. Sense of Justice. Now again, depending on what type of deck you're playing, if you're going to be playing with more events, Sense of Justice is the card. You want to run that multitasking? Run it. You want to run that lay down the law? Run it. That is a guaranteed mental resource, and it's a helicarrier for 2, but for thwarting events. For me, it's a no-brainer. Any character that has thwart events should be running this. She does not have them in her kit. So if you're not running a lot of events and you want to go more for permanent justice, then this is not a card you want to run, because in her signature cards there are no thwarting events. So she only has attack events. So this for me, it is depending on how I want to build my character. All right. I won't say that enough. Counterintelligence, always run 1 in your deck. Same thing for under surveillance. Always run 1. You don't need more than 1. It's just perfect. It just makes everything easier. And then finally, heroic intuition. Just run that, and anybody that has a thwart of 2 should have 1. So these are easy includes in your deck. All right, let's look at the allies now. Again, the 2-cost allies. Let's look at this. Quake. Now there is a lot. There's a couple more Avengers now. So I'm looking at an Avengers Justice build that should be very, very cool, very fun, and just constantly having Avengers in your deck, and then including that Avengers Tower. So 4 Avengers with her, with Quicksilver. It makes it's. I think it's going to be a pretty cool team up with in the deck. So Quake for me is a definite include, because again, a cost of 2 ally, amazing. Same thing for Wiccan, that was introduced into her pack. It's thwart and damage, and plus you can use chaos control with this guy, so amazing. All right, so that makes a lot of sense for me. Agent Coulson, just to put down those Spycrafts, he's good. That's thwart of 2. Keep him rolling. But again, if I'm not going to do the Avengers thing, then definitely, if I'm doing the Avengers thing, maybe I'm not running Coulson. Yeah, you know, there's choices to make. Jessica Jones, again, if I'm playing Red Skull, she's always an include. And now, depending on what the scenario is, she doesn't make it a lot of times now in the decks. she's back on the streets. Yeah, she's a little less obvious for me. I like speed. The reason why I like speed is because it's a burst. So he basically thwarts for 4 when he comes in, which is very, very cool. I like that he can thwart for 4. That can really get you out of a bind sometimes. So for me, speed is a definite want to include. And then Daredevil. Well, Daredevil, he's one of your guys. He's a street level guy. So it depends if you want the extra ping. For me, if I'm going to do Avengers or if I want to do street level heroes, it depends. I think solo play, I see more Daredevil. And then in multiplayer, I tend to play more Spider-Man just because of that great enter the battlefield play that he can just come in and just get rid of a side scheme right off the bat, depending on how many players. So I think this is pretty cool. Again, there's not that many options, but there is new options now that we can kind of have Vigilante Justice. I really like Daredevil and Coulson and Wiccan for that Vigilante Justice. I think it's going to be really, really cool. Again, if you're playing solo, don't bother with Spider-Man. He's too expensive. Yes, he might remove 3 threat, but most of the time you'll be like, oh, there's no side scheme. Oh, do I play Spider-Man? The fact that he can take out a side scheme is what makes him great, but if you're playing solo, most of the time you already got the threat under control. So there you go. So that's my take. So I'm going to take a few minutes. I'm going to think of a couple of deck builds here that we can do and try to do like a couple different styles. And then we'll post those into the deck list. And then you can guys give me some feedback on what you guys think. All right, give me a minute. Let me just set this up. All right, so here it is, one of the decks that we built. So the first one, so we built 2. So we built an Avengers team deck, and then we built a Vigilante Justice style deck. Because I was talking about it, I was getting all hyped up, and I'm like, let me see if I can make something work. All right, so let's look at Vigilante Justice first. So Vigilante Justice is going to revolve with 3 double resources and 2 powers of justice. That is going to be for the resources. Let me just put this a little bit higher so I can get a better view for this. There you go. So Vigilante Justice, these are the resources we want. And then we're going to have a lot of events, all right? So we're going to be running 2 Turn the Tides. We're going to be running 2 Foils, 2 Swift Retributions, and 2 Concussive Blows. Now, we're running 2 of each. We're not running triples because, again, we're trying to keep some variety in our deck. So the Turns the Tides is basically when we're going to be able to thwart and actually deal some damage from our basic thwart. The foils are actually going to be when we actually use our Swift Retributions. So, and our Concussive Blows are all going to kind of match to try to get into Swift Retributions. So basically what you want is you want the villain to scheme. You want to have him either confused first, or you want to be able to foil it. So where's the other one? I thought I had 3 Swift Retributions. Ah, man. Where's the other one? I thought I had 3 in the deck. Oh, well, whatever. So where is the other one? All right, for sure. I'm sure I had 3 in there, whatever. So I think I would run 3. I'm just kind of disappointed. Where's the other one? Now I look foolish. Oh, there it is. All right. Sorry, I didn't make it in the cut. There we go. So 3 Swift Retributions because, again, we want to be able to do some Vigilante Justice. So we want to be able to combo off the Swift Retributions and everything with the foils, with the Turn the Tides. So we make him foil. This is more of a mid-game. Early game, I don't recommend doing the Swift Retributions because that can make you lose right away. But once you have a couple of cards set up and it makes sense, other cards are going to help with that. We're just running 1 Beat Cop, again, because it makes sense. Vigilante, Beat Cops, makes sense. Just 1 to help when we need it to kind of round up the us thwarting versus whatever else is going to be thwarting. We're running 1 Skilled Investigator because why not? We're running 2 Follows, again, thwarting with damage. So really focusing on that damage. We're running Sorcerer Supreme, obviously, because we want to have a hand size of 6. We are running Under Surveillance because we want to make the villain scheme. Adding that 4 threat to the threshold is going to be huge. So that Under Surveillance is going to be very important. The Heroic Intuition, obviously, to get our thwarting value up. And then we're running 2 counterintelligences. The reason why we're running the 2 is I know we can only have 1, but we are probably going to be popping those pretty often. When we want the villain to scheme, he's going to scheme for nothing, 4 damage, use counterintelligence to kind of avert that kind of stuff. And just always keep the threat under control while still making them scheme. So either we confuse him, either we foil him, or either we counterintelligence him, and then we should be pretty good. And then we have a couple of vigilante heroes, which are Daredevil and Jessica Jones. And we also put in Coulson in there, but you can remove Coulson if he's not enough of a vigilante for you. I was actually thinking more along the lines of Miles Morales. I thought he could be a good replacement for Coulson. The reason why I like Coulson is he actually gets and fetches you a card. So that's kind of what I was seeing here as part of the deck. How I see it playing out is, again, using putting those followed skilled investigators, putting that counterintelligence under surveillance, kind of setting up in the early turns, and then really diving into thwart for damage, scheme for damage, staying in hero form, defending a lot. Like when the villain attacks you, you want to just defend the attacks, all right? Or use those hex bolts and try to make him stun him or confuse him, just to kind of do that. So a couple of alternatives there you can use. Again, if you don't like Coulson, he's not enough of a vigilante for you. I suggest you either put Mockingbird or Spider-Man to just round up the kind of street level heroes. And yeah, so that is it. The deck is pretty simple. Just do some damage with Justice. Try to punish the villain for scheming. I think this is going to be a good strategy for villains like Hulk, for villains like Rhino. My stupid hiccups. It's 10 at night. I get hiccups for some reason. So that is it. Anything aside from, I think, maybe Ultron might be weird to try to do that against Ultron, but son of a gun. Give me 1 second. Alright guys, so this is our first deck build that we are looking into Wanda. We're going to call this Vigilante Justice. I think it can work with pretty much anything, but we're going to be focusing on the street level heroes for this. So we're going to be looking at Daredevil, we're going to be looking at Jessica Jones, Mockingbird, and Spider-Man. So these are going to be our vigilantes that are going to kind of help us out in our crusade for justice. All right, so these guys are just going to come in and just help us out on the street level, either to defend our blocks and everything like that. We are then going to try to set up an engine where we can make the villain scheme. So our primary damages are mostly going to be coming from the swift retributions, where we want the villain to scheme so we can deal damage with that. Now, I didn't really use that in the pre-con because I was I didn't think the cards were there to set that up. Now, one thing that we're going to try to combo with that is we're going to try to use those hex bolts first and see if we can give them a confuse status effect. All right, so that is going to be one of the things we really want to do. The other one, if we can't have him confused with a hex bolt, then we're going to try to confuse him with a concussive blow. Now, if we can't confuse him with a concussive blow, we are going to try to mitigate the threat being placed by playing the counterintelligences. And if that is not enough to counter, so we're going to have the foileds. So we're going to try to make him scheme and then foil his plans, and then he's just going to go up by 1 or 2, which we can easily manage with our basic thwart. All right, to increase our basic thwart, we have, again, a heroic intuition, which is going to make that easier. And just in case, it does get a little bit high, having the under surveillance van out there is really going to help give us some breathing room to really maximize this synergy with the street level justice. All right, so Vigilante Justice. So this is the main plan: swift retribution, concussive blows, a lot of damage. And then once we see some side schemes pop out, we do have 2 follows you know, get some more damage in, which I really, really like. Like, it's really a damage focus justice build. It's really, really, really cool. We're going to be adding Beat Cop in there, just one. That is going to be to help round out, like, oh, okay, so, oh man, there's 4 threat, but I can only thwart for 3. Well, Beat Cop will come in and remove a threat, and then we can finish it off. And when we do get to finish it off, we do have 2 Turn the Tides to take advantage of that last thwart removed and do some damage with that. Now, one of the cards that I opted to leave out was Stealth Strike. I just thought that the cost was just a little too high for what I wanted to do. But I think with this is a really nice array of cheap cards that can really do some damage and have a nice protection way. So again, we're going to be adding a few other complementary cards. Obviously, the Sorcerer Supreme. Obviously, we're going to run a Skilled Investigator to give our chances to draw. And then we have the 3 double resources and the 2 powers of justice to really focus on this super cool Vigilante Justice build. So that is our first one. So I hope you guys like this deck. I'm going to put all the cards and then I'll write it in the comments so you guys can kind of just, you know, take the deck and you don't have to try to remember it, because CBD doesn't have the Scarlet, the Wanda Maximoff up yet, so can't do that. So stay tuned, because I got another deck coming, and this is going to be Avenging Justice. All right, coming up right now. All right, now for the second build that we're looking at, so check it out. It's going to be an Avengers build. All right, so it's going to be all Avengers that we're going to cycle through, and we're basically going to have 4 allies that can help us do whatever that we'll be able to cycle through, and we'll be using a lot of alter ego style. We'll go down to alter ego a lot, and then we'll be able to play this really fun. So obviously we're going to have Spider-Man, War Machine, Speed, Wiccan, and Quake, and then obviously we have our Quicksilver, so 2, 4. So we have 6 allies. We'll be able to always have 4 in play at the same time, and then we'll always be able to cycle them. So use them a couple times, use them as blockers, and then keep the ball rolling and forever and ever. Now, what are the things that we're going to be running this? How are we going to be paying for these Avengers, Steve? So again, we're going to be trying to reduce the cost of even the biggest Avenger by down to almost 2 cards. We're going to be running an Avengers Tower. We're going to be running a team building exercise and a Quinn Carrier. So just with these 3, I can pay for almost all of my Avengers for 1 card. Or some of them, even the 2 of these guys, are coming out for free just with the team building exercise and Avengers Tower. So that is going to be super cool, because you can cycle those things. And again, this is a lot of heavy permanence. So once you're on the table, this is going to be just magical. And then also what we have for this, just to complement the Avengers theme deck, is we're going to have an Avengers Mansion. So again, Avenger team. What's great about the team building exercise is it actually helps pay for the Quinn Carrier. It actually helps pay for the Avenger Tower and the Avengers Mansion. So that team building exercise should be your number 1 card to put down, because it's going to help reduce the cost of everything else. So that is one of the ones. I was debating on putting 2, but I'm like, I think 1 is just enough. It's good enough ramp. And then to help the Avengers go, we have a couple of Beat Cops that are going to just keep there and keep threat at 0, because we are going to be spending a lot of time in alter ego at first, just to always get our maximum hand size and just drawing more cards with our ability as soon as we have Quicksilver out there. Other things that we're going to be playing are, there's going to be 1 counterintelligence and 1 under surveillance, again to just bring that threshold down to the maximum. Obviously, other complement cards are going to be Heroic Intuition and Skilled Investigator that are just going to round up the corner. We're going to be running 1 surveillance team and 1 interrogation room, again, just for all these really low-cost permanents. And then we're going to be running our Sorcerer Supreme, obviously, because... And then we're only running 2 events in this deck. We're running 1 Foiled and 1 Order in Chaos. These are the only 2 events that we are running in the deck. And then after that, we're going to have the slew of double resources. So this is the Avenger style build. Again, so many permanents. Everything is going to just basically stay on the table. As soon as you play it, it's staying on the table. And it's just going to be so much threat mitigation, so much control over what's happening. And you'll never be short an ally to block. You should never be... once you have a couple of these cards on the table, it's basically money for you, and then everything should be pretty smooth and smooth sailing going in from there, because with all the allies to block, with your hex bolts to give stun effects and status cards, you can go down to alter ego and never really worry about anything. And then all the extra resources from the Avengers Tower, and then the Queen Carrier and Avengers Mansion, and plus the other one. So you should technically always have like a hand size of 8 almost. So it's going to make most of the games pretty straightforward and easy peasy lemon squeezy. So that is the Avengers themed Avenging Justice deck. So that's 2 decks that have completely different styles that are going to should be really interesting to play, and should really man, I'm just saying really a lot, really. All right, I think I'm trying to convince you of something here that I don't need to. So you guys can check this out. You can try it for yourself. I know I'm going to be playing this, and I'll let you know how it goes in my playthroughs. But guys, so Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch, Justice, or Vigilante Justice, or Avenging Justice. Check it out. Try it out. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. So please, I hope this video is helpful for you to understand what Wanda Maximoff in the Justice aspect, and how the synergies can work. And hopefully this video will help you beat the game. Ciao, ciao.